to Cheap Book Review. I'm Eric Stafford talking to you today about June on the Range. It is June, and that means it's time to read Westerns. Nothing but Westerns for the month of June. That's what you're supposed to do. But anyway, that's a book talk thing or a booktube thing. If you watch YouTube or TikTok, some of the especially guys, there are some ladies, but mostly guys on Book Talk and BookTube that are doing June on the Range. Well, I kind of wanted to mix that up a little bit, and so I'm going to go over this. Sit down, rest on the porch a while. It's going to be a while. Grandpa's talking. So what I was kind of going to go over is some of the Western pickups that I got, and that includes comics. You see the comics sitting here. I got comics that I'm going to talk about. I've got the books that I'm going to read for June on the Range. And June on the Range is an event created by Michael Vaughan, and he is a booktuber, and he's kind of a funny guy. I like to watch him, and he talks about different things. But he created this event. He has a lot of the booktubers that follow him, and they're also doing June on the Range and talking about Westerns. Nothing but Westerns for the month of June. And I think Star Trek's in there somehow. I forget how Star Trek can be in there as well. It's like another booktube event. But anyway, I've been really into Westerns since the last June on the Range, and I kind of got into them then, and I've just kind of stayed into it. It's kind of appealed to my old manness, and I've just like kind of took it up. Much to my family's chagrin, they've had to watch a lot of old Western movies and all kinds of stuff that I missed as I was growing up. I mean, Westerns were prevalent when I was growing up, and I remember, sit down kids, Grandpa's going to talk. I remember watching Gunsmoke first run on Sunday nights, and I know Gunsmoke was on for 20 years, and I was around for that last 5 or so that I was conscious enough to know what was on TV, and but we watched Gunsmoke every Sunday night, and watched to see what Matt Dillon was up to, and I was used to watching the Wild Wild West. I liked that show quite a lot when I was a kid. Some of the other ones that I never saw that I'm just now seeing because of the magic of streaming is like Rawhide. Rawhide I never saw that running locally when I was a kid growing up. There was one show that I love and people don't even hardly know about it, and that was called Branded, and it was with Chuck Connors. And Chuck Connors had been shamed. He was considered a coward and a traitor, but he was basically a secret agent for the government. He even helped like President Grant do some stuff. But he was, so it was kind of like Wild Wild West in that, because they were Pinkertons and Secret Service before there was a Secret Service. But I saw those growing up, and they were just there. And my grandmother, in particular, my grandmother Nell, she lived with us, and she read Louis L'Amour. She read every Louis L'Amour. I mean, if Louis L'Amour come out, she read it. She was a big action person, which a lot of people think, older women, they don't really think, that they like that stuff. Man, she loved Charles Bronson, loved Chuck Connors, Chuck Norris, that was what I was going to say, Chuck Norris. She loved Chuck Norris before she passed away. She watched all the Chuck Norris movies and Walker, Texas Ranger and all that. She was all into that. So I kind of got that. I remember my mom really liking Westerns. And so we watched a lot of what they call odors. We had a lot of odors going, oters, like oats, eating oats. But anyway, for June on the Range, I just kind of wanted to talk some cheap book stuff and go over some of the stuff that I picked up recently. First Saturday in May is Free Comic Book Day. Some of these books I got at Free Comic Book Day. Lenore had its first Comic-Con, and I picked some of the books up here, some of the comics up from that. That was at Mulberry Rec in May or April. I think that was in April. And so it's June already. June's already popped up. But anyway, these are some of the pickups I got. I picked up a copy of Rawhide Kid, number 30, and this is it's Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, man, doing cowboys. I mean, come on. And something a lot of people don't realize was Rawhide Kid come out, and he becomes Rawhide Kid because his Uncle Ben gets killed. And then a few months later, Stan Lee used the same thing. Uncle Ben got killed for Spider-Man. So that's kind of funny. But anyway, you know, you could tell that they were just writing comic books and they had production to go. But I picked up this copy of Rawhide Kid, and if you get like a good copy of Rawhide Kid, it's going to be some pristine money. And I think we're talking dollar comics right here. A lot of this stuff. But got a Rawhide Kid number 30, which was 12 cents back in the day. I never paid 12 cents for a comic, so that tells you how old it is. The comics when I started were 25 cents when I started buying them with my own money. So we'll get to that. We're getting there real quick. So and now they're $4.99, $3.99, $4.99. So anyway, Rawhide Kid number 30. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Also another Rawhide Kid I found to pick up, Rawhide Kid number 36, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Had to pick that up. I think a little Larry Lieber in there too. If you don't know who Larry Lieber is, he got credited with the Iron Man movies and stuff because he drew Iron Man for a long time. But Larry Lieber is actually Stan Lee's brother because it's Stanley Lieber. And then he just shortened his name to Stan Lee because he didn't want people to know his name because he wanted to save Stanley Lieber to write the great American novel, and then he never did. So that's the way that worked out. But he wrote all these other things that we all know. Actually co-wrote, I would say, you know, with Jack Kirby, because you know, he would leave it to the artists to do stuff. There were other artists at Marvel that complained and left. Wallace Wood, who was famous for doing EC Comics, he left Daredevil because Stan Lee would never give him a story. He would never give him a story. He would write the story, then he wouldn't get writing credit, and then Stan Lee would put his name on it and write the word balloons, and then he would get writing credit for coming up with the story. Well, did Stan do the dialogue? Yes, he did. Was it snappy dialogue? Yes, it was. Did he also edit the book? Yes, he did. But at the same time, he didn't come up with the whole original story, and that's what a lot of people have a problem with. I can kind of identify with both sides of it. I think that Stan Lee wrote some of it. Some of the artists come up with some of the stuff. And sometimes he would tell them, you know, I want a story about this, and then he would have them go draw it, and then, you know, they drew whatever they wanted to draw. They come back, then he wrote the words. So DC didn't play that stuff. DC, they had a full script, so there you go. That's how you don't have that confusion. But that's why Marvel comics were so exciting, because they were done very quickly and just had a kind of kinetic energy to them. Also, but I love seeing Jack Kirby draw anything, and definitely the Rawhide Kid is a highlight for that. The Two Gun Kid, which is one of Marvel's least known Westerners, Marvel had a whole series. They had the Two Gun Kid. They had some. I'm trying to think of what the other gun kid was. But they had there was a lot of kids. Kid Colt, that's the one that's coming up. Anyway, Two Gun Kid, Kid Colt. And when I was young, I remember them crossing over with the Avengers. A lot of the Western heroes crossing over, and Hawkeye became really tight with the Two Gun Kid and the Kid Colt and all that, and Rawhide Kid. But Two Gun Kid, which I'd never seen that many in the wild, so to pick that up, you know, pretty cheap. The Cheyenne Kid, now Charlton Comics did a lot of weird stuff. Charlton Comics was actually a printer. The company that owned Charlton Comics, they were actually the comic book printer, and they would get artists and writers to do the comics for them, but then they would just kind of hold on to them, and sometimes they would pay them and sometimes they wouldn't, and then they would finally come out years later. There was a lot of issue with that, and they were known for being on cheaper paper and looking a little rough. Sometimes the color not lining up, more newsprinty looking. But anyway, here's one of theirs called The Cheyenne Kid, and it's drawn by a guy in an anime style, and he's from the Orient. And I was really kind of shocked by that, because this is like the early 70s, and I was like kind of appreciative of that, because it's got kind of more of a anime vibe to The Cheyenne Kid. Kind of crazy. Now, Billy the Kid was also by Charlton, And I do like the art, and the art's different, and they have different art teams that do it from time to time. But I was surprised at how good this looked, and I picked that up. Kid Cody, actually. Kid Cody was with Atlas Comics. Now, Atlas Comics come about for just like a year or two in the 70s, and a lot of people quit Marvel and went to go work at Atlas. And the guy that owned Marvel that sold it decided to start another comic book company again, and he started with what Marvel had been before, which was Atlas. And so he got all the best artists and writers, and including Larry Lieber that we talked about, Stan Lee's brother, to come and work for him in the 70s and do that. And so I'm sure there was a little problems at the Thanksgiving table because Larry was working for Atlas Comics and Stan was working for Marvel. So I'm sure there was a little problem with that at some point. But it was very short-lived, Atlas Comics. Weird Western stuff. Now, in the 70s, Weird Western started taking over in the comics, of course, with Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex being probably arguably the most famous comic book character. I mean, straight comic book Westerner. And over the years, it's gotten even kind of strange because it was weird in that he had the scarred face and everything, but he was just a bounty hunter. He was a regular cowboy. And I always thought as a kid, because they made him look so much like Clint Eastwood, I always thought they scarred his face just so Clint Eastwood wouldn't sue him, is what I always thought. And so he's a bounty hunter with a scar on his face to keep him from looking like Clint Eastwood, but half of his face did look like Clint Eastwood. And they would draw him a lot like Clint Eastwood. And so I was always kind of shocked that they got by with that. But anyway, Jonah Hex was known as a bounty hunter, and he's a tough guy and a little more like the spaghetti westerns like Clint Eastwood. And so I always enjoyed that as a kid, and that's the one I remember the most growing up. But then in the 80s, Joe R. Lansdale started writing Jonah Hex, and he put more of a mystic kind of occult kind of thing to it. So it was a weird Western, all right, but he made it even weirder and had it more mystical and stuff. And if you watch the movie with James Brolin in it, it's more mystical. Like he touches dead bodies and they tell him things and things like that. Here's another Billy the Kid as they keep going. I kind of put them according to timeline because this one's up to 35 cents now. We started with 12 cents, now we're in 35 cent territory. But which is more what I remember as a kid. But this one is all John Severin, an all Severin issue. It's even written on the book. John Severin was famous for working for EC Comics, and he continued to work, God, into his 80s. I mean, he was doing stuff for Dark Horse and stuff, as I recall, in the early 2000s. So, I mean, he was still working up until that time. But John Severin was a great comic book artist, and he was great at war comics, action comics, and kind of the ones that weren't superheroes. War, Civil War, Westerns, that kind of stuff. Now, Kid Colt Outlaw, which he's teamed up with the Rawhide Kid right here, I might add. This is from more of my time period, like I said, like 35 cents in the early 80s, and it was drawn by Gene Colan that drew Dracula for so long. I mean, a lot of these people that got like known for drawing westerns they just didn't do superheroes. They weren't superhero guys, so they did other stuff. Here's another Billy the Kid. And you know, when you stop and think about Billy the Kid, and they made him like blonde-haired, blue-eyed and all this stuff, and you've seen these pictures of Billy the Kid, and he looked nothing like that. William Bonney or whatever his name was. But he didn't look like that at all. I mean, I guess, you know, just to make it different, their Billy the Kid is blonde-headed, blue-eyed. Another Jonah Hex. We've hit 40 cents. I remember they hit 75 cents when I was in high school, and I was all shocked and dismayed that stuff was 75 cents. But you know, Jonah Hex, you know, eventually got his own book. That book earlier was Weird Western, but he eventually got his own book and got into that. So but that's how popular he was. He probably is the most popular comic book Western hero. I know you're thinking like the Lone Ranger and stuff like that. Yeah, sure, Lone Ranger had a lot of issues, and a lot of that stuff, but created solely for comic books, it would be Jonah Hex, I believe. I believe that's correct in that. And so picked up some of these. Some of these just dollar books. Some of them maybe $1, $2, nothing crazy, but just picked up some of those. Also picked up a copy of Hot Lead. Hot Lead is like there's only 4 issues of Hot Lead, and it's kind of like a fanzine, which is it's like made by fans for fans. So in this particular one, this is Hot Lead number 4. There was 4 issues that they've done so far, and anyway, this particular one is just reviews of books, which is really kind of interesting because you have fans come in and write reviews for books, and I found out a lot of books from this. I recently went to McKay's. We're going to talk about a McKay's pickup. If you don't know what McKay's is, let me fill you in, children. McKay's is a used media store. They have, well, a little bit of everything. They have action figures, they have video games, they have albums, they have CDs, they have DVDs and Blu-rays, they have comic books, they have books. They've got all that stuff under one roof. There's a very nice one in Winston-Salem. There's a very nice one in Mebane, which is just outside of Raleigh, and that's where I picked up the stuff we're going to talk about here in a little bit. I had to take my son to the airport, and we got to hang out in Mebane for a while, and it was a while. It was a while. But I've been to the one in Mebane the last 2 times I've been. And but some of the books that are in here, I'd read the review or seen the cover, and then when I saw it at the used bookstore in Mebane, I'm like, hey, I'm getting that, and I picked it up. But the haul you're getting ready to see from that stuff, it's kind of crazy. But I'd ordered these off Amazon. You can get Hot Lead off of Amazon. This is number 4, and it's an all review issue. And then this is, I think this is issue 2. And I picked up issue 2, and you see there's kind of a size differential there. When this one arrived at the house, the wife was like, why is it in such a small package? She knew I was supposed to be getting a book, and she's like, why is it in such a small thing? I don't know. And we opened it up, and it was that much smaller. Because I got the 4th issue first, I really wanted to see the reviews of the books and that type of thing. But this is talking a lot about the cover art that was done for Western paperbacks back in the day, and how that stuff was. Because if you look at any kind of stuff, book covers and stuff now, it's almost all photoshopped or some kind of AI rendering. So to see like true artistic stuff is really kind of cool. And this was their art issue, and it had a lot of some of the color issues, color, and it's actually bigger than a paperback would be, but you can see what that paperback art was like, and it's kind of cool. And that was full color. This one's more black and white, and like I said, it's got reviews of books, and it'll have the book cover and maybe a review, and it'll tell you, some of them will say, there's even a review of Valley of the Gwangi's comic book from Dale Goldkey in here, and they say it's horrible. It's a horrible thing. But I've always seen that comic book and wanted to see that. I got to look that movie up again. Valley of the Gwangi, where it's dinosaurs and cowboys. So Ray Harryhausen did that did a lot of the movies that you might know, the Sinbad movies and things like that. But dinosaurs and cowboys. Now, I did watch Cowboys and Aliens with James Bond and Han Solo the other night. And I hadn't seen that. And another reason I want to go back and watch it is The Mandalorian and Grogu are out. And that's directed by Jon Favreau. Well, so was Cowboys and Aliens. And so I kind of wanted to go back and see that because I hadn't seen it. And I wasn't really into either one of those things at the time, Cowboys or Aliens, so I didn't watch the movie at the time. And now I've gone back and seen that, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I've been enjoying the behind-the-scenes stuff as they talk about Cowboys and Aliens and talk about how they filmed it and how they come up with it. And it is actually the first movie after Casino Royale that Daniel Craig did. So he did Casino Royale and became James Bond, and then he did Cowboys and Aliens, and so it's like a big kind of gear shift for him. But he was, I mean, he'd gone over. I remember at the time when Casino Royale came out, people were just stunned at how good it was, and it's still, it probably is the best Bond movie overall, I would say. Close second, Goldfinger. I mean, Goldfinger's like classic Coke. as a friend of mine would say. It's like classic Coke. And then, you know, but I grew up with Roger Moore, and I like The Spy Who Loved Me, and a lot of people hate that movie. I like Moonraker. A lot of people hate that movie. But I will say that probably the two top movies of the Bonds are probably Casino Royale and Goldfinger, are probably the best. So part of June on the Range is that one of Michael Vaughan, who originated June on the Range, one of the booktuber guys' things is he says to read, for the month of June, read one Zane Grey, one Louis L'Amour, and then 2 of whatever you want. I guess you're supposed to read a book a week, or, you know, whatever you can squeeze in. I'm not that fast a reader. I take a long time. I do have a lot of ebooks. I've got a lot of stuff as ebooks, but I do enjoy a physical book, and I do enjoy reading that. And I've been reading one of the Lassiter series, which is supposedly by Jake Slade, but that was a house name, but I've been enjoying it. And so I really like the way it's written. It's written as kind of a Lassiter in those books. There's a classic character called Lassiter. It was created in Riders of the Purple Sage by Zane Grey, which is considered like the first or second Western. I'm not a big fan of Zane Grey's writing, but anyway, so Zane Grey is, you're supposed to read a Zane Grey, a Louis L'Amour, and then, you know, whatever else you want. So I'll be reading some of the comics. They're quick, you know, 15 minutes to read a comic, or 10 minutes. So for my Zane Grey, what I'm looking at is one I picked up here locally at Tybreeze Books, and it's called The Big Land, which it looks ancient. This book looks ancient. It came out in 1976. Out Where the West Begins. This is Zane Grey's kind of country. The Great American West. Savage, man-killing, and absolutely real. Zane Grey knew the Great Plains, the Rockies, and the sun-blasted deserts of the Southwest. Zane Grey knew the wild excitement and shattering loneliness. From all that magnificent experience came the stories in this book, some of the finest action-adventure stories ever written. So that's exciting enough, and I love the cover. And it does have that 50s kind of a feel to it. But Zane Grey, the reason I'm not a big Zane Grey fan is it is almost like a silent movie. I mean, me and my wife laughed at one line, was like, that would be dastardly. You know, it's so over the top old, I guess because it came out in the early 1900s, and so that's part of it. But it's kind of hard to read. He talks about the landscape a lot, and I don't care. I don't care about the landscape. Get with the story. What are we here for? So I'm going to try to read these short stories by Zane Grey in The Big Land, which is one of the stories in this book. And this was edited by his daughter, Lauren Grey, so after he had passed away. So, but Zane Grey there. That's my Zane Grey, The Big Land, I'm going to try to read. For Louis L'Amour, Catlow, I got interested in this because of the movie with Yul Brynner. I love Yul Brynner, and I've been watching The Magnificent Seven, and he did another movie a little later called Catlow. And anyway, Catlow and the sheriff, they're like brothers, and they've been friends all the time that they've grown up. And then one of them's been for the law, and one of them's not been so much for the law. And guess which one Catlow is? He's the not-so-law guy. The relationship is between Catlow and the sheriff is a lot like that in Justified, that Elmore Leonard used in Justified. It's very similar. They were both friends and grew up together, but then one of them's always been a bit of an owl hoot, and one of them's always been with the law. So it's that kind of a take like Justified, and that's why I wanted to pick that up. Also, I picked this one up last year at June on the Range, and it's called One Man Massacred by Jonas Ward. And I found out later, after studying these, that Jonas Ward, this is actually a pretty good pickup for a $1 book. Jonas Ward died young. He died like from a heart attack when he was like 40 or something. And he wrote this series of Buchanan novels, and he started them out. He did like the first 6 or 7, and this is one of those, and this is actually considered the best one, is One Man Massacre. And I just happened to picked that up, and I found another Buchanan novel later. I don't know if he wrote it. They did house names, so they still said Jonas Ward, but Jonas Ward didn't actually write it. It was some other writer of the later one, but the guy did write this, and it's considered one of the best ones. And another thing about Westerns, especially the Westerns from this time, they were like 150 pages. I mean, 150 pages is doable to me. I could see reading that quicker than some of the other things. Also, picked up this Ralph Compton, and I just loved that cover, and that's another Tybrisa pickup. If you've never been to Tybrisa Books in downtown Lenore, do yourself a favor and go by there. You'll enjoy it. If you're a book lover at all, you're going to find something in there for $1 that you're going to want. There are some things that are more than $1, but I mean, for the most part, everything's $1, so you can kind of find stuff. They have DVDs and movies as well, but definitely worth your time. They're open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. On Saturday, she's only open till 4, but they're open like 10 to 4 on Saturday. They're open 10 to 6 or 10 to 5, I think, during the week, during Thursday and Friday. And she also does some online sales on Facebook. You can go on Facebook and follow Tybrisa Books in Lenore, and see, she'll do like a claim sale. Like you can say, she'll show a book, and then somebody will say sold. You know, they'll, as soon as the first person to nab it, you know, then they'll go pick it up later at Tybrisa's. But anyway, I picked this one up. It's a Ralph Compton, and here's something really weird. Okay, only publishers do this stuff, and only Western publishers do this stuff. But okay, Ralph Compton died a long time ago. He wrote Westerns in the 90s. He got cancer. He passed away. But he was kind of a new Louis L'Amour in the 90s, you know, because I think Louis L'Amour passed away in the 80s. Or maybe the early 90s. And so Ralph Compton kind of became the next guy. Well, the publisher, the publisher went with that name. You know, they went with Ralph Compton. So now there's a whole series of Westerns, and they come out all the time, and you'll see them at Walmart, and you'll see them at the grocery store. And they're called Ralph Comptons. But guess what? Ralph Compton didn't write this. They're just called Ralph Comptons. And so it says Ralph Compton, really big at the top, but that's the brand. It's not who wrote it. Actually, down here at the bottom, luckily, the Ralph Compton people do tell you that Matthew P. Mayo wrote this book, and that's who's at the bottom. And after starting to read this one, because I read like the first chapter or so, and I really liked the way it was written, I went and picked up other Matthew P. Mayo books because I found out that he wrote it. I mean, it's there on the cover, it's just in small type. And then giant up here is Ralph Compton. But this is about, you know, a guy named Big Charlie Chilton. He knows better than to lose his temper, but, you know, guess what? He does, and then he gets in trouble, and then he's got a whole book he's got to go through because the guy lost his temper. So, but that cover, the cover got me. I mean, I am a book by its cover kind of guy, and so I saw that, and I was like, man, I really like that. And I've seen other editions of this because it did come out, I think, earlier, and I've seen other editions, and nowhere near as great a cover as that is. I love that cover. It's just a great cover. But that's the 4 pickups that I have for. I got a Zane Grey, which is the Big Land. I've got Catlow for my Louis L'Amour, and I'm going to read One Man Massacre by Jonas Ward, and The Hunted by not Ralph Compton, but Matthew P. Mayo. So looking forward to reading those. Now, I was also going to go through this and show you, like, now that's what I'm wanting to read. That's my hope. This right here is my hope chest. This is what I hope to read and get through in the month of June. But, and I still, I've been doing some pickups, so I got a lot of pickups here. Recently, I got to go to the Book Exchange in Hickory. I don't know if you've ever been to the Book Exchange in downtown Hickory. The lady that owns that has been running that store for a long time, and she's getting up there. So her hours are very sparse. I mean, it's like 1 hour here, 1 hour. I mean, not that short, but it's like she's open from like 11 to 4 or something, some during the week. And I never seem to be able to catch it. So I was in Hickory on a Saturday to go to a Comic-Con, and I'm like, I'm swinging by the Book Exchange and seeing what she's got. And it did not disappoint because I haven't been into Westerns the last time I was there. So I went and hit them up. You guys have seen me talk about the Edge books. George G. Gilman, who wrote the Edge books, he also wrote a series called Adam Steele, and there was a lot of Adam Steele there at the book exchange. I picked up Adam Steele and Satan's Daughters, which Adam Steele apparently is an older kind of character. I haven't read any of the Adam Steeles yet. I've read a couple of the Edge books. But here's Adam, this is number 17. He's with Satan's Daughters. Adam Steele the hard way. So I guess things don't go easy. They go the hard way. But Adam Steele is kind of an older character, and he kind of reminds you in the covers, he looks kind of like Lorne Greene, you know, like it's Lorne Greene without the boys. And he's, you know, I don't quite know what his story is yet, but a lot of times he would team up with Edge. Now, Edge is the character that Gilman created that was a lot like a spaghetti western kind of character. Kind of a combination of spaghetti westerns and Charles Bronson, because the guy looks like Charles Bronson in a lot of the covers. So this guy looks a little more like Lorne Greene, and as the covers go on, I've seen he starts to look more like an older Clint Eastwood. But and there's even team-ups of Adam Steele and Edge, and Gilman wrote them together, wrote both series of books. This is Adam Steele number 20, Wanted for Murder. And some of the font styles and everything, they were all done by Pinnacle Books, and some of the font styles and everything are similar. Adam Steele 21, Wagons East. Here he's starting to look a little bit more like Clint Eastwood than Lorne Greene. And we have The Big Game, Adam Steele and The Big Game, which is number 22. And number 23, Fort Despair. I mean, you got problems, go to Fort Despair, I guess, you know. We'll see what happens with that. There's also so many series of Western books. Also picked up these, I saw them at McKay's months ago, and I totally passed these up, and they were Apache books, and it was a series. This is Apache number 7, Bloodline. And as soon as I got home and I was reading some reviews about them, then I found out that a lot of people love these Apache books, and it's a little more savage and rough like the spaghetti western. So Apache number 7, Bloodline. Yep. And like I say, I grew up watching Gunsmoke, happened to pick up Gunsmoke, Blood, Bullets, and Buckskin by James A. West. James A. West has written a lot of the Ralph Comptons, but he wrote a series of Gunsmoke books, and these are one of them, with a foreword by James Arness. So that lets you know they come out in the 90s, and James Arness was still kicking, and he wrote a foreword to I guess it was a general foreword for the whole series. But anyway, that. Also, they had a very cheap Louis L'Amour of Lando, and I love that cover, the beat-up boxer, because it's about one of the Sacketts that's a boxer. And so looking forward to reading that. It was a cheap copy there. And like I say, I'm currently reading a Lassiter book. Lassiter was like originally a character created by Zane Grey, and then some other people just came in and took him over and decided, one of the publishers decided, you know, he was out of copyright. So they just took the name Lassiter and went with it. Well, these are written by Jack Slade, but it's a house name. It's not Jack Slade. But the ones I've been reading, or the one I'm reading, is really good. But anyway, a great cover, great kind of early 70s cover, and just really love that. And it's called Hell at Yuma. So, you know, things aren't going good. It's Hell at Yuma. And the official, this is another one from Book Exchange, the final one. And the official take on who the original Western would be, The Virginian. And The Virginian was a series of short stories. You see, it's like, you know, it's about 300 pages, but it was a series of short stories that were written by Owen Wister. And Owen Wister was like really good friends with Teddy Roosevelt, and who was one of the Rough Riders. And so he was friends with Teddy Roosevelt, and he wrote this book, and he even dedicated this book to Teddy Roosevelt, because they were such good friends and enjoyed the West and enjoyed being out West. And but anyway, The Virginia was a bunch of short stories. It became a long-running TV show, not as long as Gunsmoke, but it ran just as long. And I've been watching those now that I had never seen the show in my life, and it's on cable now, so I've been watching those. So there seems to be a lot of Virginians on Sunday night for some reason. So after the NASCAR race, I tend to watch the Virginian and see what's going on there because I've never seen them. Never seen them in my life. Now that was the pickup from the book exchange. This is the longest video in the world. And but I got to go to McKay's in Mabin, Mabin. We're going with Mabin, and got to go back by there, taking the son to the airport. We had to kill some time. I can kill time in a bookstore, about 2 hours in fact. And we just went through the westerns, just took inventory. When I got there, I knew where the westerns were because I'd been there just a month or so ago. And so I knew where the westerns were. So I went straight to the western section and just started taking inventory. I'm really bad to do that. I did work in a bookstore. I worked at B. Dalton Bookstore in Lenore Mall when I was younger, way long time ago. But I have worked in a bookstore, so I do know my way around. And so I got this. One of the things that I was telling you earlier about Ty Brisa books in town. Ty Brisa books in Lenore, books are $1. So I'm like, hey, if it's under $1, then it's worth getting. It's worth getting because even if it shows up at Ty Brisa's, you know, I can get it for less than that. So I just took inventory. There were some people I look at their books and I just know I don't want. I mean, there's the Long Arm series. I read the first Long Arm, and I've heard the first 20 Long Arm series are pretty good. Now they're considered adult westerns. They have like 2 sex scenes and it's kind of like a James Bond movie, but with a little more heavier sex scene. But so they'll have the sex scene, 2 sex scenes, and then the rest of it's the regular western. And that got popular in the 80s after the ultra-violent things in Edge and that stuff, where it was more like a spaghetti western. Then the adult westerns came, and Spur, Long Arm, Gunsmith, all of those were like adult westerns. Slocum, Jake Logan's Slocum novels, they were all called adult westerns, and because they had like 2 sex scenes, and then that was it, you know. Actually, the first Long Arm had 3 or 4, which was kind of, and they just happened. It's just kind of weird when you're reading it. But anyway, so those books I passed up. I'm like, I didn't want any of those series, and they didn't have any of the low numbers anyway. I'd heard the first 20 Long Arms were good, and then after that it was Writer of the Month. Writing is, I think, I'm trying to think of the name of it's like Tabor Evans or something, I think is the name of the fake author. So my goal was clear. I had to go through the western section, which it wasn't that big. It's not that big a section. And go through the westerns. And if it's under $1, or it really just is really good, that was the only reason I would pay more than $1. So if it's under $1, it's gold. I'm going to try to get that. We'll go ahead and start with those because mainly it was Louis L'Amour. There's so many Louis L'Amour books, and we know that. But here's the stack of Louis L'Amours I got, and I don't think I paid more than $1.50 for one of these, maybe. And I learned some things too. Learned while I'm doing it. Beaudry. Yeah, I thought, okay, there's Beaudry. That sounds pretty cool. And then there was Beaudry's Law, and I'm like, okay, so I never heard of this Beaudry character. Where did this happen? And actually, it's a series of short stories that Louis L'Amour wrote, and which I love the yellow cover. It just jumps out at me. But it's short stories, which that intrigues me even more. So I want to read. I'd rather read short stories. I don't read. I can't keep my attention long enough. But I get into collecting stuff like this, and then I've got tons of them. Will I ever read these books? I sure hope so. But I'd have to live to be 100, I think. So those two, Beaudry and Beaudry's Law. Dark Canyon, great cover. Fallon, great cover about a gambler, guys gambling with cards on the front. Love that. Looking forward to that. Hanging Woman Creek. Horrible title, but anyway, it was under 50 cents, or 50 cents or less. High Lonesome, which I think every character, every Western novel has some kind of High Lonesome. I think that's just a generic title. This one is called the Iron Marshal, and I think this is the one I spent $1.50 on, and it was because I've heard how great this book is. I've heard that it's just a really good book about the Iron Marshal, Tom Shaughnessy, or Shawnee? Or Shawnee. Okay, he's like, you know, Irish or something. But the Iron Marshal. And it had a great photo cover. There's like other, that's another thing. There's been like other editions. It's like the catalog I showed you has like a big border on it. I'm not so big on the big border ones, but the ones with the original artwork are really cool. Jubal Sackett, which I had a copy of that I got up here, but it was kind of rough. 50 cents. I'm grabbing it. The Key Lock Man, which I've seen a lot of this out there. Killerone, which I've heard of, Killerone. And Ride the Dark Trail. So picked all those up. Only one of them over 50 cents. So, you know, that's a pretty good deal. That was at the McKay's in Mebane. Now also, I try to pick up when I see them. I don't see a lot of them in good shape, but I do try to pick up old paperbacks that are like from the 50s. This one's from like 55, and it's Destry Rides Again, which is a famous movie with Jimmy Stewart and Marlene Dietrich. And I also picked that up at McKay's that day for $2. But this particular book was like, I think this book might have been $2. So got the book and the movie. And but Max Brand wrote Destry Rides Again. It's probably his most famous book. Cassidy, Hopalong Cassidy, was a name that this guy and character that this guy come up with. And so it says first time in paperback, so I don't know if they were in hardbacks or how they come out. But Clarence Mulford wrote and created Hopalong Cassidy. Well, when the movies come out and the guy was becoming Hopalong Cassidy and it was more for kids, he didn't really like that because he'd written a westerns about Hopalong Cassidy. And so they wanted him to write it more like a children's book and write them a little more, you know, childish, and he didn't like that. And so he quit writing them all together. And they got a young man to come in and write some more based on the character from the movies and TV shows. So it was more like that. And the guy they got to write them was some unknown writer at the time named Louis L'Amour. And this is not one of Louis L'Amour's, but Louis L'Amour did write 5 Hopalong Cassidy books, and this is not one of them, but this is one of the originals. And so when I found that imprint, I was like, and they had a few of these by Mulford, and I'm like, I'll read one of them and see how it goes, and then we'll see. Now, when I was growing up, we were talking about watching the westerns I watched, and one of them was Grizzly Adams, and here is the legend of Grizzly Adams. And this book is in kind of rough shape. I've got it in a plastic baggie right now because it looks a little suspect. I mean, if you get a book with mold on it, the mold can transfer to your other books. That's one reason. And you can order these little baggies off Amazon. It's just like comic book baggies, and by the same companies. And so I bought some more baggies. And that's why you see the shiny cover on some of these to kind of protect these, but also protect them from themselves and others. He tamed the ferocious grizzly, the terror of the West. He called the wild animals his friends and the wilderness his home. The legend of Grizzly Adams. And I remember watching Grizzly Adams and loving that show. There was even a Grizzly Adams doll action figure. I did not have him, but it was like a big gem, Mattel's big gem. Sticking with the Ralph Comptons, here's a Ralph Compton that Ralph Compton actually wrote. This was another 50-cent book, but this is Death Rides a Chestnut Mare. And I went through his first trail book. The first one which was called The Chestnut Trail. And so I enjoyed Ralph Compton. It's just Ralph Compton died at a young age, and this is one of the ones he actually wrote, which is Death Rides a Chestnut Mare, and for 50 cents, I'm picking that up. This one, I've seen so many great reviews from the Hot Lead review book here and others, is The Cowboy and the Cossack. And it's written by Claire Huffaker. And Claire sounds like a girl's name, but it is a guy, it's a man. And he wrote several books and several TV series And he wrote several episodes like Bonanza and other stuff like that. But he wrote the movie The War Wagon, the book that he wrote that it was based on, and he wrote the script for the movie The War Wagon with John Wayne and Kirk Douglas. And but this one never got made into a movie, and it's about Russians getting cowboys to bring cows and cattle to Russia, and then they have to cross the frozen tundra of Russia with these cows. It's a cattle drive in Russia. And there's one main cowboy leader, and then there's one main Cossack leader, and then there's a young man that idolizes them both, and it's kind of like he sees how they're the similar and how they're the same and then how they're different. But anyway, it's gotten great reviews. It finally got re-released digitally, and I'd picked it up digitally, but then to see a copy of it, and this one in particular, this one has some water damage on it, so you never know. But that's another reason to put it in a plastic baggie. But I had never seen a print copy of The Cowboy and the Cossack, and so yeah, I picked that up because it's supposed to be really, really good. I was talking about the Buchanan novels earlier, Jonas Ward and Buchanan. Here's Buchanan's Stolen Railway, and it says by Jonas Ward, but I think Jonas Ward had passed away by that time. So this might be a later one, but anytime I see a Buchanan book, I'm going to pick it up, and because you never know. You never know how good it's going to be. Speaking of Ralph Compton again, Ralph Compton originally wrote 3 Trails books for his publisher, and which is St. Martin's Press, by the way. But the first 3 he wrote it all at the same time, and he wrote the Goodnight Trail, the Western Trail, and the Cimarron Trail, and all 3 of those have to do with Caleb. I'm trying to think of the character's name, but I read the first one. Trying to think of Benton McCaleb. And so the first 3 books, the Goodnight Trail, the Western Trail, and the Cimarron Trail, were all 3 written at the same time by Ralph Compton. He wrote them as those 3 as a series, and that started the Trail series. And they're very hard to come by. People love those books, and so I found a copy of the Western Trail. I nabbed it. It's the middle book, but I had read the first one, and now I got the second one, so looking forward to that. I picked up this book because it's written by Richard Matheson. It's the memoirs of Wild Bill Hickok, and it's also another book. It's a twofer, Shadow on the Sun, and by Richard Matheson. And you might think, and it's one of the, you can tell it's like the more modern paperback. It's kind of bigger. So, Richard Matheson. If you know of an interesting story or a good movie or something like that, there's a good chance that Richard Matheson wrote it. I'm trying to think of all the great classic science fiction books he wrote. He wrote The Incredibly Shrinking Man. He wrote that and the screenplay, I believe. He wrote a lot of screenplays too. But he wrote the book and the screenplay for The Incredibly Shrinking Man. He wrote for I Am Legend, which was also The Omega Man with Charlton Heston was I Am Legend. If you haven't figured that out, if you've seen the Will Smith I Am Legend movie, then go back and watch The Omega Man with Charlton Heston. A lot better movie. So he written those 2. He wrote Stir of Echoes. He wrote a lot of stuff, and he wrote stuff varying all over the place, but everything he wrote was really, really good. And 2 Westerns by Richard Matheson for $1, yeah, I'm picking that up. And so I did. So, and it's one of the rougher books, but at the same time, it's sturdier, thicker, and ready to handle it. And I'd also, they had these 2, after I dug through the Louis L'Amours and all this stuff, I happened to see the hardbacks. Yeah, I said it, the hardbacks. They had hardback books, larger edition Westerns that I hadn't been looking at. I've been looking at the paperbacks. I've been looking at the mass market paperbacks. So I find the hardbacks, and I'm looking through them, and they did have the hardback leather-bound editions of the Louis L'Amours. They were about $6 a piece. But they're kind of, they're great if you're putting them in a library in a mansion, but the cover, they got no cover. I mean, it's got a cover. It's just brown leather, and it says Louis L'Amour signed at the bottom, and that's pretty and all, but no illustration whatsoever. They didn't even reprint the cover or put it inside like the first page as a nice little slip. No, nothing. It's the most boring book you'll ever see in your entire life. But they're leather brown, and they look like they'll be here a while. So that was some of the big ones. So of course I didn't get any of those because I want the cover and I want the 50 cent. So 50 cent, $6, easy peasy. But I happened to see these two Best of the West books. Best of the West 2, which is new short stories of the West, and Best of the West number 4. And this is also more short stories. There was an original Best of the West that was edited by Joe R. Lansdale, which I've told you I like Joe R. Lansdale. He writes a lot of westerns and supernatural stuff. And then there's also like a later one I've got digitally by Tony Hillerman, who wrote, the mysteries. And but these are just short stories of the West, and I look forward to reading those. And it's a big, nice, big print book. Let's go through some of the. Does anybody stand out as far as an author? Nobody to me, but I'm new to it. We'll put it that way on that one in particular. But I might come back and tell you that it was like the best story ever. Or I found this story and it was the best story ever. But anyway, those two Best of the West books, and short stories are more likely to get my goat. But that's it. That's a heck of a haul. It's a heck of a June on the range. This will probably take me more than June to go through. I'll definitely go through the comics before June's over, and my 4 books I hope to. So that's my pledge, is to try to read those and get all that done. If you're into westerns, if you want to get into western books, you might check out this Hot Lead book that's on Amazon and buy a copy of that. It's like $10, and they'll ship it to you the next day. And then you can read the reviews of books, and you might see, or go online and read some reviews of books and see what you might want. There are tons of westerns on Kindle Unlimited. If you're a Kindle Unlimited person, knock yourself out. There are tons of westerns on Hoopla and Libby and those apps that you can get for free. And one of the great things about Caldwell County's public library, in particular the Lenoir branch of Caldwell Library, is we are known for our westerns, and they are actually in the state of North Carolina as part of the NC Cardinal. We're known for our westerns, and so a lot of the westerns that people pick up, they pick up from the Lenoir Library, from Caldwell County Public Library. So, and if you go in there and you look at the new bookshelf, they'll have new westerns. They have a lot of westerns on audio if you're interested in that. So if you're, and definitely western movies, they got tons of western movies as well. But we're known for being a western library. And not just Western North Carolina, but as in carrying westerns. So that's kind of cool that we kind of have that identity and are kind of known for that. But these are just, some of my pickups. Will I ever get to read all these? I hope so. I hope so. The wife hopes so. The family hopes so. Sometime I'll read all these, not just have them on the shelf. But I'm trying my best. And a lot of these I have picked up digitally. I have them digitally as well. I do love the cover art. I like seeing that stuff, and because I'm kind of a graphic art and art kind of person. But and I like reading out in the sun. I like to sit on a sunny porch and sit out in the sun and read. And a lot of people, it blinds them, they can't stand it. No, I love it. And that's one of the things I love about Kindle, is Kindle has a screen that you can read outside, and it's e-paper, it's e-ink. And that's one of the things I love about it, is I can sit out on the porch and read it. Now, do I have a lot of books on my iPad? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I've got stuff through Apple Books. I've got them through other ways. And I will say, Apple Books is a lot easier to run than Kindle, and they don't throw ads in your face all the time. But that being said, there are a lot of free westerns digitally. If you go to Project Gutenberg, you can borrow stuff from Internet Archive. You can borrow stuff from Libby and Hoopla, like I said. There's audio. You can borrow the audiobooks from Hoopla and listen to a Western. And sometimes that's just as fun as listening to a book. Sometimes you pay more attention when you're listening to it than reading it. When you're reading it, sometimes you might be in a hurry and have to go back and reread something. But at the same time, you know, it's a great way to enjoy a book. So don't. And if your eyes are getting bad, hey, the Kindle's good for that. You can blow up the type as big as you want. And then on top of that, if you don't want to go electronic like that, get an audio book and listen to it. And then, you know, somebody's reading it for you. There's a lot of variation out there. I just hope that you participate a little bit in June on the Range. I wanted to show you what I was doing for June on the Range and what I'm basically doing all the time anyway. And you guys have dealt with me talking Westerns before. The last 2 shows I've done have been about Westerns because I've been collecting these Westerns. And but I just kind of wanted to do a June on the Range show. I've been wanting to do this for a while. As you can tell, I've had this haul and I haven't done it. And but now I have. And got this out of my system. And see, maybe you guys will be excited about June on the Range and read something yourself. Let me know. Contact me. You can email me at eaststafford@caldwellcountync.org, or you can call me. My number here is 757-1448. You can email me or call me and say, hey, I was reading that, or hey, I wanted to read that. And or you got a suggestion, or you want to talk about Westerns or movies, or you want to talk about Western movies, we'll talk about that too. I've been watching a lot of Western movies because I've just really got into this genre all of a sudden, and I've just really been enjoying it. And I hope you do too, and I hope you have an excellent June on the Range. And thanks for watching. See you next time.